Do you want to become a CFO and take control of your career? Our podcast series From Go to CFO will give you a unique insight into what it takes to become a successful CFO. Hosted by the three amigos at AXR Recruitment and Search, myself, Greg O'Shea, and my colleagues Kunal Gupta and Nick Constein, we speak to inspiring and successful CFOs from our network as they share their career journeys with us. It's the closest thing you're going to get to delving into the mind of a CFO. We hope you enjoy it.
Well, welcome to today's episode of Go to CFO. My name is Nick Constein, Associate Director here at AXR Recruitment and Search. Today, we're joined by Chris Allenby, CFO at Lewis Land, one of Australia's largest privately owned property groups. Chris's career began at KPMG as a cadet at just 18 and making it to partner by 32. Over his 12 years as a partner, he advised private and mid-cap listed companies, family businesses, and high net worth individuals across a broad range of industries, with a particular strength in property. In March 2020, at the onset of COVID, Chris stepped into the CFO role at Lewis Land. Since then, he has navigated the transition from chartered accounting into a high net worth family group environment, shifting from advisor to decision maker, while reshaping finance, strengthening culture through decisive hiring, and balancing creativity with accountability within what he describes as a true collective. In this episode, we'll explore that mindset shift, the realities of leading in a private family business, how Chris continually evaluates his own skill set and his team's, and what resilience and leadership looks like in a period of rapid change. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for the warm introduction.
It's great to have you. I know we met in December. It's taken a little bit of calendar gymnastics to get this in line, but thank you very much for your time. I was really keen to get your story out there. I feel like sometimes, as we were just talking about, I guess you don't even realize what you've been through and what you're doing through. It's a really good just moment of reflection. So to kick things off, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your life before your professional life?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in the south of Sydney, so a little suburb called Engadine, which, funny enough, was named by the explorer because it reminded him of some magnificent valley in Switzerland.
Really?
And I've been around Engadine for 45 years, and I can't yet see the similarity.
Yeah.
But it was a great place to grow up, and I was the eldest. I am the eldest of 5 sons, really loving, supportive parents. And yeah, I grew up, I loved school. I just loved it. Why my kids don't love it? That's another conversation. I love sport. So like cricket and, soccer and tennis and, anything with stats. Yeah. And so just the fusion of just like sport and numbers.
Yeah.
And I was reflecting, I was sort of really into both. And so not a cool guy, but not a geek, but somewhere in the middle there.
How good was the Australian Open?
Oh, yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'm such a massive tennis fan as well. And I love all the data and the analytics behind it.
Exactly.
It's such a clever way of examining like what objectively seems as not that statistically challenging.
Right. We watched Moneyball the other day.
Oh yeah.
We just, you rewatch these movies.
Good.
Yeah. And just about stats and, leading into teams and things. I guess, my initials are CA. So like I was destined to either join Cricket Australia or be a chartered accountant. Like
one or the other.
It's one or the other. It's in the name. So yeah, I had a great childhood and then was fortunate to, start a career, really, really, really good education and loving family.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so then what was it like stepping into KPMG as such a kind of young guy in such a developed in accounting world? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, well, it was early 1994, so the world was a different place. And, you hear your parents talk about 17% interest rates, and we're sort of in that world. But it wasn't really daunting at all. I remember being really excited because the firms really invested in cohorts of, young kids. So many were 17, some were 18. It was a group of 30, and it was a real investment into them. So you were sort of together.
Yeah.
You're part of a tribe. And, to be honest, they're still my tribe. I think there's 3 left in my tribe at KPMG still.
Yeah, wow.
All global partners of, some division doing really well. But yeah, people go off and do different careers and aren't accountants. But yeah, there's that real bond that you have, which, it's a shame the firms don't still do that because technology's evolved and a lot of work is either outsourced or sort of data-driven now. But yeah, I love the
But I
intro.
could see like you're being in the trenches with your team.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that's a bond that's forged that you can't replicate or force.
No, that's right.
It's a really interesting experience.
Yeah.
And what was that like for you? I guess when you started, did you always have in mind aiming for partner, or was that something that over time you got, oh, now I have an actual real shot at this, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, I always wanted to be one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because I just saw, the guys, and they were guys, to be brutally honest, in the early 90s. It was,
of course.
It was a different world, and thank God it's changed and different. But yeah, I just wanted to do it. And I saw what they did in working with clients, and I just thought that was, like what I was there for. So there wasn't yeah, it wasn't something that I'd put a plan in place or anything like that. I just knew I wanted to be one.
Yeah.
And also I was lucky enough to join the firm, I think a couple of years later.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so I would talk about your journey to partner, because it's fairly uncommon to become partner at 32.
Yeah.
So what was that like? What do you think you did that differentiated yourself from others?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. So one, having a really great sponsor. You can't do it like you need a senior person to sponsor you. And I was lucky I had this guy who was, as I was coming to partnership, he was on the retirement path. So there was kind of a natural path. And we were from, opposite worlds, but actually had a lot of similar values. And he just helped me through and pushed me into places that were uncomfortable. So I think having a sponsor, hard work, like you got to take opportunity.
Yeah.
Like you just got to. And I think luck. So I became a partner in 2008 and 6 weeks later, I think was Lehman Brothers, right?
Yeah,
so Bear Stearns.
So that was like around October.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah. And I remember having the pen on my very first audit opinion as a young 32-year-old auditor. Like the day after Lehman's went down, I was like, am I signing this or not?
Yeah.
So it was quite a time, but I guess luck, right? Because the next year they didn't make any partners or not many. So timing, you can't predict, things happen. But yeah, it just happens in your career.
It's a bit of foreshadowing to your next move. Another big global event happened.
Yeah.
Last year.
That's right.
That's pretty funny. But so named partner, you're starting that. How do you establish credibility with colleagues, clients, being at your age where maybe people would view you as too young to some degree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't really know it at the time, but looking back, yeah, you're too young. Like I was too young. But, people had faith and could see that they wanted to invest in young people like me. But I think I just kept doing what I was doing. There's no reason to change who you are or your values just because you become a partner. I do remember Facebook came around the time and my followers went from 800 to 200 overnight.
That's hilarious.
No one wants to be friends with a partner on Facebook in the early days.
Yeah.
So things do change, but I thought you just got to be the same. You just get found out.
Sure.
I guess on reflection, the youth side, I mean, I had and have imposter syndrome, right? And it's very common out there in business. Someone's going to tap you on the shoulder and, are you really the right person for this job?
Yeah.
And absolutely. So you're always sort of working with that and conscious of it, and you build strategies over time. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely had that. I was then partners with, icons of the firm.
Sure.
And you're the same.
You're in the peer group, actually.
You're in the peer group.
Yeah.
And he's 55 and you're 32 and no, you're not. You're different. Yeah. But yeah, you work through that. And yeah, I'm glad I did.
Any kind of key moments in your time at KPMG that really had a big impact on your career trajectory?
Yeah, probably. I think 3 come to mind that I've reflected on. The first is, before you become a manager and you've been there a couple of years. And in my group, with that sponsor that I mentioned, there was me and 2 other assistant managers and they resigned on the same day. And, and the guy, he just, well, all right, it's all yours. And you just got to grab it. So, the alternate was, oh, this is too hard and I'm going to, but I could see the opportunity and then got to work with the bigger clients and, spend more time with that partner and his director. And yeah, I think that was a pivotal moment for me. And it was around then he sort of said, we can get you to partner. And, I might have been 25, 26, like really young.
Yeah, wow.
And then, when I became a partner, the second moment was joining another group of, partners that I really respected and were a bit older than me and forming a new group, which was sort of an offshoot of an existing group within the firm focused on privates and families and high net worth individuals that we thought was sort of being under-resourced. And that sort of bonded us, like I was talking about being in the trenches as a kid.
Yeah.
We were then in the trenches as young partners and, trying to make something work.
Yeah.
And they could see it and they gave us an older partner as a sort of a mentor. And like we really thrived. It was hard, but just helping build something, I think was something momentous. And thirdly, is kind of the opposite. Is the, difficult and more challenging part in my career was, at a time when, I had issues with the regulator. And, investigating my work and, the firm's work and responses to various pieces and, all sorts of emotions from, daunted and, terrified and,
of course,
and, uncertain about the future. And you've got to go through those things. Those things happen, and maybe not to the extent that I experienced, but things happen. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
So I think it really, gave me that opportunity to be resilient and, realize the sun comes up every day and surround myself with, great positive people. But yeah,
I always feel that you learn most when it's getting really hard,
Yep.
as opposed to when everything's going and you're kicking goals,
Yep.
then all of a sudden you have a big hiccup. That's a real moment of just buckling down and believing in yourself and just going and just persevering, I guess.
Absolutely. Like my journey to partner was just straight, right? I don't know why, but it just happened. All the boxes got ticked and I didn't really have a challenge. And so actually becoming a partner was actually more relief than excitement. And I, at the time, thought that's actually not, why am I feeling this? It should be more exciting, but it was more relief because it sort of put the pressure on myself. But I hadn't had those sort of horizontal experiences where things don't go to plan and you've got to find a different way and navigate. Yeah. And that's been a big lesson, especially where I am now at Lewis Land, in a much smaller team and less opportunity, and seeing really good people navigate horizontally to go vertical.
Yeah. I guess that would bring a good segue into how did you end up at Lewis Land? What was that journey like? Why Lewis Land?
Yeah, well, Lewis Land was a long-term client of our group in KPMG in the private space, and some of my colleagues, and a former partner and a really good mate of mine, Matt McCarran, had moved to be the CFO. He was a partner with us and he'd moved. And then, fate happens and he becomes the CEO, and it's a great story. Well, I like it. He called me for breakfast and he said, I need a CFO. Can you help me write a job description? And so we met for breakfast and I helped him. He was a younger guy, and I guess he saw in me someone a bit older that he could talk to. And so we wrote it out, and then that was 55 minutes of the 60-minute breakfast. And then he just turned the bit of paper around and he said, well, when do you start? And we sort of co-created the role together. And this was all in the background of COVID, just sort of bubbling away. Yeah. And so, a bit of back and forth. And I joined and I just got married. And so it was on my honeymoon and we're in the States, flying back, masks on, the whole thing. And I started the next day.
March.
In March, yeah. It was the day.
Before the lockdowns, I would imagine.
The day of.
Oh, wow.
The day the Prime Minister got up and said, you're all working at home. We're at home for 6 months.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So
what a way to start.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And so what was that like? I mean, you had to learn basically, you've never worked in a commercial environment outside of your role at KPMG. What was that like? Because you have to build all new relationships. You're not the known entity anymore. You're like the new kid on the block. Yeah,
all of that. And, back to that imposter syndrome, that kicks in. So you have that natural, it's not fear, it's just, I'm the right person.
Sure.
I was so lucky. So like, a couple of people in particular, Matt. So he was the former CFO, so he knew where everything was. And
he didn't leave the so it makes it easier.
I had someone there. And then my 2IC, Ty, just so passionate about the business and such a supportive,
very capable.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Yeah. So I remember my first day and he took me through his model. We just sat there for 2 hours and over time I then met the rest of the team and just spent time. I guess that in those times you had time.
Correct.
So there was actually time to reflect and, talk more.
Yeah.
So I think just all those things.
Did you have your first 90-day plan as to what you're wanting to do in the new gig, or how did you approach starting?
Yeah. Actually, no, the answer is no, because it was COVID. You didn't know what tomorrow brought.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just knew that I sort of needed to get up the curve pretty quickly.
Sure.
I had to run an audit tender process. I guess, that was the first thing I did. I ran an audit tender process, which I was familiar with. I was an auditor.
Sure.
And Matt and I were ex-KPMG, so there was some rules around finding a new auditor.
Sure. Oh, yeah,
so
that makes sense.
we had to run that process. And I think that gave me confidence, and I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, of course.
I was the expert in the room. And that sort of then built on, give me the confidence to then do new things. But I think that, the plans sort of slowly evolved once I could see the business, see the people, their skills, where they wanted or needed to go. And then you actually meet people. So it was 3 months until I met anybody. Yeah, well. They all thought I was 6 foot tall, and I'm only 5'6". So people have it.
You're 6 foot tall, yeah.
Yeah,
on
people
the computer screen, you mean?
Yeah. They think you're tall because you've got a suit on, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you got to sort of start again. Yeah. So no, I didn't really have a plan, but it's just feeling your way.
Yeah. And maybe for some context, because maybe I'm thinking of the pubs business. So, but maybe do you want to give everyone a little bit about Lewis Land as a business? And maybe that's why I was thinking that specifically.
Yeah, well, you mentioned earlier, it's like a collective. It's a collective of really unique real estate businesses. We have a developments business, which is really our DNA. It's how our founder built, the company over the 40 years that he ran it. And then we have a retail business, which operates outlet shopping centres, and then a pubs business with 4 amazing venues in Western Sydney and Queensland. So a really diverse group of passive and active assets. Yeah, so that first month of COVID, the pubs are closed, the shopping centres are closed, and no one's paying you a cent.
Yeah.
So as a CFO, you're,
The tap's turned off.
Yeah, that's right. And so we're having to go through cost measures straight away and, discussions with banks who I'd never done that, but had experience as an auditor and, clients
and you're
in trouble.
Partnered with someone who's very capable in that regard with Matt.
Yeah.
You've been through some degree of that.
Yeah. And also just your advisors. So leaning on your lawyers and your accountants and your consultants that, they're doing it for the guy next door. So, which I just continue to do over the last 6 years, lean on your advisors. But yeah, and it's been a feature of the business that as things go up, others go down. And, that it's a really sort of bulletproof business in a way and supported by, the different ways that each of the businesses work. And they're great fun too. So having a hospitality business.
Yeah. It's a fantastic business, but it's also quite shocking when you have to absorb all of that cost within your first month. I'm sure you're probably trying to figure out pretty quickly how to make that happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you remember back, the government was, we thought very generous. Remember the, the job keepers and the job starts and when, we might still be paying for that. Who knows?
Yeah.
Will we ever know? Don't know. But yeah, there was all that, which we didn't bank on. And, we designed our own systems. So we thought, well, we've got 600 staff, most of them casual, and I think the credit to our owners and board as they go that far and they think of, the employees at all our venues. And so we'd had mechanisms in place should the government not be there, but then the government stepped in.
Yeah.
And again, to their credit, we went through the government schemes, but our own support as well.
Yeah.
And not just for employees, but for customers. So tenants in our retail outlets and then the buyers buying houses as well. So yeah, really supportive sort of owners that get the long-term.
Yeah. And it shows the human touch element, doesn't it? When you have someone like that kind of gives you a pretty good view in as to who they are as people, as opposed to obviously very successful business for more than 40 years, but that's a nice human touch to it.
Oh yeah, no, it's very people focused business, and that sort of suited me. Like the coming across from KPMG, that was sort of my approach as well. That businesses are collectives, like they're collectives of people. Governments are collectives of people. We have big corporations and brands and labels on them, but they're just people.
Yeah, and so how do you go about, I guess, establishing some credibility and also inspiring change? Or I guess my question would be, you have a business that's been wildly successful and probably an owner who's wildly successful and probably has a pretty good view on how to do things. How do you add your own touch to it coming in? Like, how do you make suggestions or how do you get the buy-in for them to listen to your suggestions?
With patience.
Yeah.
Patience, privately owned companies that are successful for a reason. They are built on a foundation of something. And so, you have to influence to make changes for the better. And often that's about, 1, being patient, 2, having a backup plan, 3, showing where it's been done somewhere else. 4, just using your connections. So over a long time in your career, you meet a lot of people and, somebody's done it.
Yeah.
And you're building it for change. You're building a package to support the change and, how it will add value to the business, how it will add value to the owners.
Yeah.
But also to, all the stakeholders. Because I guess that's one change I really saw is when I did the transition was the breadth that you have to think about in terms of stakeholder management.
Yeah.
As a KPMG partner, you have a client. Yeah. And you have a partner in charge and it's kind of those two people.
Yeah.
Here you've got all sorts of owners, lenders, insurers, consultants, it's a really broad range that you have to think about.
Yeah. That makes sense because it's a collective decision to some degree.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And so then just thinking about, leadership and from your team perspective, how do you develop your team? Like, what's your thought process on building teams and motivating them? Because like you said, when we first opened, it's not KPMG. You can't say you're going to be promoted in 18 months, assistant manager, then you're going to be promoted to manager and then director and then partner.
Yeah.
Here it's kind of like, it's a lot less structured. How do you manage that?
I think the first thing is you've got to care.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be in you to help people.
Yeah.
Which is something I learned from my grandfather. It's just helping people. I think you need that, number one. And that's not necessarily sympathizing with people, but it's an empathy, an understanding of them. Second is they're not you, so realizing that we're all different and you're not trying to make them you, you're trying to make them them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And getting rid of yourself, your stubborn self and removing yourself. And the way I kind of do that and have developed over time is it's like a mirror. Your role as someone's mentor or leader or coach or whatever is you're just their mirror. You're just holding the mirror up to them and they're voicing, what they want to do, what their challenges are, where they want to go. And I reckon 9 times out of 10, they work it out.
Yeah.
And that's what you want.
Sounding board.
Yeah, you're a sounding board. Yeah. And I think it goes back to my role in my family, eldest of 5 sons, the responsible, suit guy.
Yeah.
You're kind of that one, that's you're just helping people through their challenges or opportunities and letting them explain it.
Yeah.
I love the quote. I used to use it when I was a young partner, let silence do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just silence. People work it out.
Yeah.
So I think, it's a combination of those couple of things.
Yeah, that's perfect. What do you think your role as CFO, how does it play into shaping or protecting the organizational culture?
Yeah. I mean, you could say it's the most important role.
Yeah.
You could say that.
Depends who's asking.
It depends whether it's your CEO asking or your board or it's, it's your family at home. But I think the CFO, and depending on the remit of them, has a really unique role. I know I do at Lewis Land, that you can be the glue for a lot of things because like in my role, it's not only finance, but it's HR, IT, overall support, the office. And so you're always there, like I said before, like for the mirror, helping people understand where they're at. Often you're the decipherer of the CEO's strategy. So we've had 2 CEOs in my time and often you're a safe pair of hands. People can come to you and like, what is this part of his or her strategy? Yeah. And you can kind of help them through it, navigate it because you're probably a bit closer to the CEO. Yeah. And without the, there's not the fear factor in coming to you. So you can be part of that glue. And I really like that. Yeah.
I think it suits your personality. Yeah. Seriously, I think you're very approachable and I think people would enjoy that factor and being able to just say, hey, I'm stuck. Can you help me? I feel like that comes across as genuine. Yeah. And back to that care factor, like you've actually got to care, which I genuinely do. And then, so what are your views on taking complicated financial matters and taking them to a variety of different people? How do you put them, or how do you make it digestible for different audiences? Like, what's your tactic on taking complex information that needs to be, digested properly, but maybe by different audiences who have a varying understanding of finance? Yeah, I generally find there's 2 sort of people. There's people that love numbers, maybe like me growing up and, looking at the cricket stats and all that. Yeah. And then there's people that want to see it in a picture. Yeah. And so I think in presenting something, you've got to do both. Yeah. You can't tell a flowery story and not have numbers to back you up. So you've got to sort of position both things for both sort of audiences. And I sort of start and contextualize stuff by storytelling, by like putting it into sort of plain English, but with an example that might not be financial. You're telling a story and it's a way of expressing like what those numbers are or what we're trying to do. Because generally numbers are just a function of output or what's happening in the business. And then, if you're presenting to your board, it's making sure you're hitting both for both audiences. Yeah. And then, you get a question from one sort of person, they're talking and you're working out, well, what type of person's this? Yeah, of course. Am I going numbers or storytelling? Yeah. And I think success is having both of those for accountants or, people in finance. Yeah. Being able to do both. And so what was it like interacting with a board from obviously I'm sure you've met plenty of boards and senior people, but being the actual CFO, where you're the one being accountable, what was your first board meeting like, or how has that changed over time? Yeah, terrifying. Yeah. It was on Zoom. Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's right. I was really lucky. I had great experience at KPMG, like presenting to boards as an auditor, which I did in the latter part of my time there. Sure. So privates and a lot of private equities that are bought into a company and want to understand, that makes perfect sense. And give your view and that be okay. I'd only met our owners once before starting, and then the first board meeting was then the next meeting. Yeah, wow. So, again, lucky, great CEO and Matt who led the way and sort of gave me the runway to, take time. But you realize that you know what you're doing. Yeah. Yeah. And you just sort of go with it. But otherwise they wouldn't have put you there. Correct. So you're just reminding yourself all the time. Yeah. Mm. And have you guys put much thought, or is there a plan in place from a technology standpoint on embracing AI, technology, automation, things like that? Or what's your guys' position? Yeah, no, definitely. We adopted the, AI, sort of general use AI probably 12, 18 months ago and, invested in the technology, but then the training of the team members, so we put a bit of money into it, to be honest, because you can see that this is where we're headed. Yeah.
I guess it's desktop at the moment. So supporting people with, analysis and presentations, things like that. The next phase is what we're looking at now is, the use of data and, having it sort of robotized for those processes at the back end. But then in the front end, say, take retail, for example, like how can we use AI in our stores?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and our other divisions, how do we use it for customer facing stuff, not just supporting the back end? So I think we're on the train. I like to think we sort of adopted a little earlier. Forums I talk in, we seem to have jumped in early. It's now the next bit.
Next phase.
Yeah.
I find a lot of people are quick to adopt like the things that will help you on the day to day.
Yeah.
But then the impact stuff, I think I was reading somewhere that it was, less than 10% of Australian companies believe they've had any meaningful impact using AI.
Yep. Yep.
That just seems that will change quickly.
Yeah.
At least my thoughts are.
Well, I'm old enough to remember the internet. We didn't know where it was headed in the late 90s, but we knew that it was different. And I think we're in that moment as well. We don't know where this goes, and it will go. Like a couple of guys in Silicon Valley will figure it out. Yeah. Yeah. And get us to the next, phase of society and living.
That's fascinating. That's very interesting. Alrighty. Were you always a career planner? Did you have an idea that you wanted to leave from partner that you wanted to be CFO, or did that eventuate out of circumstance, or what was the thought behind that?
Yeah. No, never had a plan.
Never had a plan.
Saying that, I said earlier, I always wanted to be a partner, but never had a plan to get there. I just thought that hard work, curiosity, luck sort of, gets you wherever you're going to get.
Yeah.
But when I was a partner and gave that a red hot crack, I then knew I wanted to do something different at some point. And, fate occurred and I ended up at Lewis Land, but I've never planned for it.
Yeah.
I don't believe in like over planning a career because I think that limits where you go, and that you have to go horizontal sometimes and sometimes you go backwards.
Yeah.
And, if you don't get where you want to go, that's a pretty big failure for you to cope.
Yeah.
That you've set this amazing goal and you don't get there. Whereas I'd prefer a much sort of diverse sort of way of getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And being happy along the way and, having your family support.
Because I always find, it's not linear to get to CFO. I mean, there's about a million ways to get there.
Yeah.
And I always wonder, and this is something that I always ask anyone, which is, what would be your advice for anybody who's in that, let's call it CFO -1 role, who's aiming to hit CFO? What kind of advice would you give them?
Sure. Yeah, think horizontal first, so how can you branch out and do other things that improve your skill set, get you wider in the business, and then ultimately support your CFO? Because that then just gives you all the skills for when you do become one, that you know what you're doing or that puts you in the place. Yeah, I think one thing I learned from that mentor I mentioned earlier is there's kind of two workplaces. I have two workplaces. One is a big office, small office, and one is outside. And in the office, you're doing the day-to-day, you're transacting. You need time outside. And he said, you need to dream.
Yeah.
And you can't dream in sitting in an office. It's not, So, that person aspiring to be a CFO actually needs to get out of the office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you do to balance professional and personal?
I've got relatively complicated professional and personal life. So it was a single dad for many years.
Yeah.
So I'm still picking up from school,
yeah,
a couple of days a week. And
that's awesome.
And doing that, I think you have to accept that there's, compromise and sacrifice. When you're all finished up, which one are you going to remember?
Yeah, of course.
The school pickup or sitting in a boardroom? It's probably the school pickup. So keeping that in mind, and that might hold you back a bit in career. That's fine if you don't want to do, that's fine. But for me, I've thought that is the most important job you've got.
Yeah.
So I've been really comfortable sort of with that and really enjoyed sort of the variety of, being in the big smoke and doing that, and then being at home being told by your 16-year-old, how you could do things better.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think of that now. My son started school last Monday, and I just think he was so excited that I was there for drop off and pick up on the first day. He couldn't believe it. And I think as you say that, it just really solidifies those decisions of being present, because it is really important. Yeah. A very important moment for him and for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
We left being like, oh my God, it's happening. He's the proper little boy now. So yeah, it's just an interesting perspective. I think that's a balance that I would love to see more of. I think I've interviewed, as you can imagine, quite a lot of people, and there are some, only way I would describe it as martyrs, just working to the bone, and then basically never see their families. And I just can't call that successful, even though you might be very financially successful or career driven. But the big picture, I'm not sure if that's the right thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You got to be satisfied. You've got to have purpose and happy in life. And yeah, everyone's got to find their way.
Yeah.
Mm.
And do you think the way you define success today has changed over time? Do you think like when you were younger, you had a different view on what success looked like?
Ironically, no.
Okay.
It's the same thing. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
You get out of bed and like you get up and then you swing your feet around and then they hit the floor. And in that moment, like something goes in your head, I got to go to work, right? When the answer to that is, I can't wait to get to work, you're doing the right thing. When the answer over a sustained period is, this is really hard, you're not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that has been my thing for 30 odd years.
I love that.
And maybe they should have a different thing, but I haven't found a better one yet.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Why change it?
It's my checker that I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
The other thing is there's this concept called flow. A psychologist in the 70s or 80s, maybe, could be wrong, Hungarian American, this concept of flow where you're just working, things are just working and you're not even thinking about it. Like it's just all works. All the cogs are moving.
Yeah.
And I encourage listeners to look it up. And when you're in that state because it all just works. Most of the time you're not, but if you sort of aspire to find that, then I've always found that that's how you can sort of balance everything.
Yeah, that's great. We'll find it and put it in the show notes for people to find it. So, because I find that's really an interesting perspective. It's a refreshing perspective to hear that. And so looking back over your time, what advice would you give your younger self before starting the journey?
Oh, great question. I recently turned 50, so you do a lot of reflection on that transition. And it's easy. I would have been more bolder and believed in myself more. Us accountants generally have a more introspective sort of, thought process and sort of, don't take as much risk as we should. I would have allowed myself to be bolder and put myself into, more situations. Definitely. I love that saying. I say to my kids, it was the FDR during the Depression. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Yeah. Yeah. And we all run around worried about something that never eventuates. Yeah. And that was me as a youngster, trying to be, successful and keep on, I said before, up until partner, nothing, it all went right. And I was trying to keep that going by not taking a risk, but you got to. Yeah. So I guess, just being bolder and having a go. Like, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. That's interesting. And so we talked a bit, I just want to go back. You were talking earlier about having a mentor and a sponsor, and it sounded like they were kind of a key part of your journey in terms of helping you navigate getting into partnership. But I guess what was the best piece of career advice that you received from either him or, another mentor?
Yeah, sure. I think two great examples. One, from a very early age, my grandfather, who was American, he migrated to Australia in the 50s and he retired to a peach orchard in the Southern Highlands. And summer holidays, we'd go and pick peaches. And he just taught me about caring for the product. So you'd pick the peach and he'd just stare at it and he'd make sure it was right. And then he'd pack it beautifully and he'd go to the customer and he'd talk to the customer forever. And, my mum was like, you're not making any money. You're looking at these things. And, he would explain, if you're going to do something, really care about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's always been my mantra. If something left KPMG on a letterhead, it had to look amazing.
Yeah.
You have to care about your product and your name. So I think that's followed me my whole career. I guess the other one, through times of, when they're tough and having to be resilient is another quote from, dear friend Matt McCarran, who I mentioned earlier, but I didn't mention that he contracted brain cancer as a very young man and, he passed a few years ago. And the trauma and the pain and, what he went through, but he always had a saying, which was onwards and upwards. So no matter what was sort of happening, it was always onwards and upwards.
Yeah.
And he was able to face his own mortality and still have that positive approach. And, I think about
it was remarkable, actually.
My spreadsheet or my board report, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I've since he, went through that journey and we lost him, I've always held that it'll be right. Just keep looking onwards and upwards. And
he was always like that,
right.
wasn't he?
Yeah.
I remember meeting him and that was very much the impression I got when I met him.
Yeah. No, a tremendous man.
Yeah. Oh, it's absolute tragedy to lose such a young, bright mind.
Yeah.
Even better human being than
the best.
person. Yeah. That's a tough one. But it's a good way to end it, I think. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really great to reflect on your time and your career. And I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, Nick.
Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the insights from our network of inspiring finance leaders as they share their journey from Go to CFO. If you're looking to make the next move in your finance career or build your team, get in contact with the team at AXR Recruitment and Search today. We're passionate about building careers, not jobs, teams, not just hires. If you enjoyed the episode, hit the like button and subscribe today. See you next time.